This is from Caleb, our friend, Caleb Carpenter. Good morning, Patrick and the podcast crew. I had a quick question I thought I'd run by you guys. My wife and I have been living in our home now for about a year. We absolutely love the house, but we are trying to dial things into our liking now. We've noticed that our year-round humidity levels are fairly high. I'm looking into getting an energy audit and blower door test done. My belief is that our house is tight enough to require makeup air, so I'm considering an HRV. I wanted to know if you guys felt like it was if I was on the right track with that. The house is a 10-year-old modular with a conditioned basement in upstate New York. I've also been considering installing a heat pump water heater. I was hoping it would help us with our high energy bills and possibly help with our high humidity issues as well. Any brand recommendations? As always, thank you for your hard work and look forward to hearing back from you guys. Caleb Carpenter, Rad Woodworks. So I guess the question is, what constitutes high humidity, and what should be done about it? And the first thing I would say is, how are you monitoring it, Caleb? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And Ian's nodding, and Brian, I'm sure, remembers this from many Green Building Advisor pieces of content. What's the issue is that most hygrometers are terrible, and you have to buy something that's actually accurately measuring the humidity, and you also have to keep your house sealed up. Am I wrong about the latter point, guys?
No, I think there's actually a lot in this question that is kind of interesting. And you're right. First of all, you have to be monitoring it accurately. He's got to get that energy audit done and know if his house is
leaking.
How house is tight is, how tight his house is. So get the blower door test done, do some thermal imaging, like all that jazz before you do anything. He said he made a comment about makeup air in an HRV, and I just want to talk a little bit about that that's not to make sure that his term, maybe it's just semantics, maybe his terminology is just wrong, but you would install an HRV you would install an HRV to exhaust air from certain areas in the house and bring fresh air into the house. The term makeup air typically applies to providing incoming air for exhaust air. So there's a difference there. HRVs and ERVs provide balanced ventilation. They exhaust the same amount of air that they're bringing in all the time. If you have a tight house and you have a range hood or a bath fan that's exhausting high enough CFM, then you might need makeup air. In other words, you might need to provide incoming air for that exhaust air. That's different from an HRV and an ERV. They don't provide makeup air, and you can't count on them for that. You can have an HRV or an ERV providing balanced ventilation and still might need makeup air for an exhaust appliance. So just a little clarification, on that point. If he may know that he may have just used the term makeup air, meaning that he thinks his house might need
ventilation,
fresh air supply. And then, you got deciding what the right level of relative humidity inside your house is once you're monitoring it is still kind of tricky because, there's a chart that you can check out, and you can Google it if you search Green Building Advisor for it, you'll actually get an article about the chart from Allison Bales. It's called the Sterling chart, and it shows sort of the ill effects on humans of too low or too high relative humidity in a house. And it sort of shows the sweet spot, which I think on the original chart was I may have this wrong, but I think on the original chart it was between 30 and 60. But other building scientists have dialed that in for just sort of, well, I guess when you bring into the equation not just human health, but you also bring into the equation the building and the health of the building. Some building scientists want to dial that in a little bit more, but it depends where you are. It's really, you're in a hot, humid climate in the summertime. You're going to need to have a tight house with right-sized AC or dehumidification to get your relative humidity in check. And likewise, in the wintertime, in a cold climate, if you don't have a tight house with properly working mechanicals, you might not be able to get your relative humidity as high as you'd like it, if you're in a cold climate. So both the seasons matter, the house matters, the building matters, occupant health matters. But first and foremost, get the energy audit done and learn about your building.
Ian?
So I've talked a couple of times on here about I think it's a Honeywell branded HRV that I installed. It was very inexpensive. I got it off of supplyhouse.com's website, and it just installs with basic snap together, snap together ductwork that you'd get from any home center. And the thing I like about it is it was one of the few that I could find where I could independently adjust each fan. So I can actually create a negative or positive pressure environment in the house, which I change that twice a year in summer and in winter to kind of offset the bringing in cold, dry air versus bringing in warm, humid air, depending on the season. So I've been very happy with that so far. And then I also installed the same one in my parents' house to take care of some moisture issues that they were having. But you can spend from very little money like I did to tens of thousands of dollars for one of the state of the art European ERVs.
And there's also, and I wish I understood where to use them better than I do, but there's also venting dehumidifiers that are a solution in some situations for bringing in fresh air and dehumidifying the building. I'm not, like I said, I need clarity on where they are a good solution, like what types of houses and what types of situations they help with, but they're available and people are using them with success to maintain relative humidity in houses and get fresh air in.
I'm going to reiterate
on the topic of makeup air. I had to have that for our hood fan, which I think is somewhere around 1,000 CFM. So it blows past what's allowable for my tight house. It'll actually, if we don't open up the makeup air damper, it will pull all the water up out of the traps and start exhausting sewer gas into the house. But
how did you discover that?
It
sounds like a funny story.
I think we just forgot to flip the switch one time because I got some help from Ben Bogey in kind of designing the system, and I'll put designing in quotation marks because it's pretty simple. All we did was the inlet for my HRV. I teed it off before it went into the HRV unit and then put a switchable damper on that duct line after the HRV and then ran that up into the floor space behind our range so that before we turn the range hood on, we flip the switch. That opens the damper, and then you turn the range hood on. It actually brings the air up along the back wall behind the range. So even in winter, you're not sucking that cold air into the house. You're really just bringing it right up the back side of the wall behind the range and then out the range hood. But it's keeping you from having any of those negative effects from depressurizing the house.
As a brief anecdote, Martin Holliday reported on GBA about folks who have these giant range hoods who were actually sucking, fireplace embers out of the fireplace when they turned on the range hood.
Yeah.
That's what's at work, right?
Can do some pretty weird stuff when you start doing that to a house.
1,000
yeah, and more harmful than a little bit of ash coming into the houses are, if you have combustion appliances, flue. We've talked about this before, but flue gases, which could kill you. Yeah.
Caleb, get a blower door test. If you can't afford to do that or find someone to do it, get a thermal camera for, a few $100, and on a really cold or really hot day, pay attention to what your house is doing, and you can learn a lot that way too. But I sent him a link to a program NYSERDA has, which is New York's, efficiency agency. And they seem to have some pretty attractive programs to help people figure out how their houses are performing, much like Caleb is trying to.
He's within driving distance from Greenwich. I mean, when you're going to go up to Glimmerglass for the Opera Festival, aren't you, in Cooperstown? And you'll just drive right past there, and you're way up from Greenwich to the Opera Festival this summer.
It's interesting. I have a photo shoot in Cooperstown next week. I'm betting Caleb is not far out of the way, right? Because he's
I don't think he
Albany.
is.
Pack up your blower door, Patrick.
Take it along. See, I knew you were going to Cooperstown for Glimmer Glass. You're just hiding behind some photo shoot thing.
Here we go.
And go up there for a little opera. And
I like most cultural things, Ian, but opera I've just not had any exposure to. So I might like it, but I don't know anything about it. If listeners have a suggestion for introducing me to opera,
good starting
first
operas
operas,
that Patrick should go to.